Writing exponential equations. So this is the form of an exponential equation. Y equals term 0 times the common ratio to the x power. So term 0 for our purposes today are going to be at when x equals 0. This is kind of like the beginning, the start, before you even start getting going and multiplying. The common ratio is what is being multiplied over and over and over again. So you can find the common ratio by dividing a y term by its previous y term. Now sometimes this will be a fraction, like if you were continuously dividing by 2, that's the same as multiplying by a half. Or if you were continuously dividing by 3, you'd be multiplying by a third. So you would use the fractional version of it for the division. And the exponent is always the x. So let's see if we can do this. We have this table of values. Now our term 0 is on the table. It is a 7 because when x equals 0, it is 7. So it's our very beginning. Now if we look at our common ratio, there's again two ways to think of this. What are we constantly multiplying over and over again? Because we're talking about multiplying. So 7 times 2 is 14, 14 times 2 is 28, and so on. The reason it's called a common ratio is you could also have figured it out using a ratio. If you take a term, such as the 14, and divide it by its previous term, which is 7, you will also get your common ratio. So if it's one of those problems that you're not sure, that's the easiest way to do that. You could have also done all the way at the bottom. 224 divided by its previous term, 112, is also 2. So the common ratio is 2. That means our equation is going to be y equals 7, which is our term 0, times 2 to the x power. Because you're starting off with 7, and then you're multiplying by 2 repeatedly. That's why the exponent is on the 2. Let's try another one. This one, term 0, is on the table of values. It's a 3. It's right here. Now this one looks like it's getting smaller. So let's do the common ratio. If I did 1.5 divided by 3, 1.5 divided by 3, I would get 0.5 as a decimal. That is the same as 1/2. So I would take either of those. Preferably would be the fraction. So we are, if you think about it, you are dividing by 2 constantly because half of 3 is 1.5, half of 1.5 is 2, and dividing by 2 is the same as multiplying by a half. So our equation is y equals the 0 term times the common ratio to the x power because you're starting with 3 and continuously multiplying by a half. Okay, so a problem like this. We don't have the 0 term on this table of values, but we can find it. So let's first find the common ratio. So I'm not sure completely what 24 times something equals 72, so let's go the other way around. What is the ratio of 72 divided by the previous term? So 72 divided by 24 is 3, which means that our common ratio is 3. So to build this table, you're constantly multiplying by 3. Well, if I wanted to go backwards and find the 0 term, the backwards of multiplying by 3 is dividing by 3. So I'm going to use my common ratio to work backwards to find my 0 term, and 24 divided by 3 is 8, which means my 0 term is 8. So my equation is y equals 8 times 3 to the x power. Remember, you cannot actually simplify this order of operations. Exponents happen before multiplying. Okay, let's try another one. Our 0 term, not there. It's completely missing. Now, if you look at the y values, it's not as complicated as it looks because it's a consistent 4 in the numerator. So let's look at what's happening to the denominator. How do you get from 3 to 9? You multiply by 3. How do you get from 9 to 27? You multiply by 3. But since those numbers are in the denominator, just make it a 1/3, because now you're multiplying the denominator by 3 consistently. Now, if you weren't sure about that, you could still do the 4/9 divided by 4/3. So if I write 4/9 divided by 1/4 down here, Remember that dividing by a fraction is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So I can multiply by 3 over 4. My 4's cancel, and my 3 and 9 reduce, and I still get my 1/3. So using the ratio of a y term divided by its previous term will still work for you. So my common ratio is multiplying by 1/3. So what's the opposite of that? So the opposite of multiplying by 1/3 would be multiplying by 3. So if I multiplied by 3, because dividing by 1/3 is like multiplying by 3. If I multiplied by 3, 4 over 3 times 3 over 1, the 3's cancel, giving me a 4. So the first term is a 4. Still not quite there with my 0 term. If I do this one more time and I multiply by 3, I get 12, which means my 0 term is a 12. So my equation would be y equals 12 times 1/3 to the x power. Okay, last type of problem is you're going to have a table of be given a graph. My hint for you is make it into a table of values. Find a couple of points and make it a table of values. So on this graph, we have the point 0, 2, we have the point 1, 6, and 2, 18. So our 0 term, which is actually also called the y-intercept on the graph, is 2. For our common ratio, how do you get from 2 to 6? You multiply by 3. Is that the same for 6 to 18? Yes, it is. That means our common ratio is 3. So it means the equation of this graph is y equals 2 times 3 to the x power.